No word on. Oh wait, there could be Tim. Tim cannot make it today, so it'll be the three of us. All right, so here we are today. It's 2021. Happy New Year. It's good to see you both. Man, it feels like it's been at least 10 minutes since I've seen you. At least.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, right. Well, welcome back, fellow council members. It's really nice to see you again. And for those tuning into the Heroic Council, know that we've obviously know that we've switched the date and time of when we do the Heroic Council from Fridays at 2 to Mondays at 2. Eastern Standard Time, of course. And right before the Heroic Council, we do the superhero hangout, which is more of like a little community gathering, get together thing. We pick a topic. Sometimes it leads right into the Heroic Council, like today. And other times we just kind of like, talk about whatever we feel like. And the last Monday of the month, we do the Geek Out, where everybody can come in and talk about whatever they geek out about, whether it be Star Wars and comic books like me, or it could be anything else that you choose to geek out about. Just come in, talk about it, and we can talk all about that stuff. So anyway, welcome back to the first Heroic Council of the year. Council members Parshell and Sarah are with me today. Tim is not joining us as he had a prior engagement, but here we are, the three of us together. So today we're going to talk about goal setting in 2021, how to set your goals, or how do you go about doing it, and then how to accomplish them. Going to give people some advice on maybe some start of the year routines, as we covered in the Hangout. 2021 is feeling a little bit different than prior years, but we're still going to try and apply the same processes and things like that. So make sure to tune in, for those of you listening, every Monday at 2 p.m. We're going to get together, talk about work, and answer your questions. If you are tuning in live, you can always leave a comment in wherever you are watching, and we will see it come in, and we can respond to you either live via talking, or we'll jump in the little chat and be able to talk to you. I think that's it. Oh, also, if you love the show, give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, where you can subscribe to it as a podcast. Usually I try to post the episodes as quickly as I can after the episode. But anywho, without further ado, let's get started. This podcast is part of the Shareable Podcast Network. Learn more at shareable.fm. Back with that 2021 energy. Feeling good about it. Okay, so here we are. Let's just talk about all the things. Let's talk about goal setting and such. So I'm a huge fan of the start of the year. I'm a huge fan of the end of the year. I'm a huge fan of the start of the year. I love kind of wrapping up my previous year. Working on words there, trying to wrap up my prior year and thinking about all the things that went well, things that didn't go well, projects that I didn't get done that I wanted to, priorities that I set that shouldn't have been priorities, and all that sort of good stuff put together. So I do that at the end of the year. I usually feel really good about that. And then I take a little bit of time to start thinking about the year that's coming up and what do I want to accomplish. And in a lot of previous years, I'm very aggressive about that. I'm like, how will I grow as a person? How will I become unstoppable? And I found that this year I didn't have that kind of energy going into 2021. I had the energy for it. I just didn't have the intention to do that, to become that. For some reason, there's just not an edge to me moving into this year. So for either of you, Sarah, you just started a new business in 2020. Parshell, you're starting a new phase of your career in 2021. I just started my business in 2020. Normally, I would think under those circumstances, we would be coming out of the gate in 2021, like, oh my God, we need to crush things. But I'm not feeling that energy. What about you two?
It's like me, I feel like it's like right in the middle. It's like, yeah, let's crush it. But also it's going to happen when in its time. I just need to show up and just do what I do. So that's kind of how I feel about it. It is definitely different. I still feel the motivation to do stuff and to, jump right into the new year. At the same time, there's just I don't know how to say it. It's just there's a grace to it.
I think that's a beautiful way to say it. For me, it's a really exciting time. Like Jeff, you said, I started my business in 2020. 2021, it feels like my training wheels are off, and I have so much potential in 2021. There are so many people that I can serve. I've really got everything ironed out. I know what I'm offering. I know who I'm serving. And I think for me, that's a really cool step. And that is energizing and motivating and creating a ton of momentum for me. I also want to be mindful of the fact that the future is unknown. I mean, if 2020 taught us anything, it was that. And I think it's really important to be mindful of setting long-term goals, but also giving ourselves the space to say, the world and life is going to happen. And are my goals still giving me an opportunity to adjust when I need to? I think that's an important perspective to keep.
Yeah, I feel all of that. Question about, because something's shifted for me this year that's kind of different from some prior years. And I'm curious if either of you are having a similar experience or if there are any conditions that kind of map on. But I started out this year with a little bit more of a comfortable cushion than I have in some previous years. Like when I had my first business, I found that every year it felt like I was starting over. Project-based work or like clients wrapping up or like, any number of different things. I sometimes came into January and was like, crap, where's my next meal coming from almost, maybe not that bad, but that was the mindset, right? Whereas this year I kind of came in feeling like, okay, well, I've really set myself up well in 2020. I had a pretty decent year. So like going into this year, I felt very comfortable about my situation. And for me, that took some of the edge off of me feeling like, I guess, operating from that state of fear of like, oh my God, I have to do this or everything's going to fall apart. So that was something that was different for me. And I think also, as we had talked about a bit prior, is that the uncertainty that came from the pandemic. I think a lot of people's goals that they had going into 2020, somewhere in between February and June, just got completely obliterated or changed, right? So I wanted to do all these speaking engagements, but then speaking engagements stopped becoming like a thing. They moved digital. So I pivoted to that, but it changed the nature of it. So how much would you say that, the conditions of 2020 going into 2021 have changed how you're thinking about things?
For me, tremendously. My whole life changed. Everything changed in 2020. And it is a cool opportunity for my husband and I to evaluate what's important to us in life. I think a lot of people are looking back on 2020 and saying, what do we want? This is a major disruptor in our working life. And what can that mean? And what are we going to do about it in 2021 and beyond? So my husband and I took some time over this break to think about, when do we want to retire? How old do we want to be? Where do we want to live? And some of those longer term things and some of those things that are important to us to think about will help drive our everyday decisions. So we definitely use what we learned and the life changes that happened to us in 2020 to just really think about what do we want? What do we really want? And Jeff, you've been through my productivity exercise with me on setting priorities. And we went through that ladder of where do we want to be in our life in 5 years, in 1 year. And we went through that together. And it was a really cool way to set us up for this new decade, actually.
That's really cool. Is it Hawaii, by the way? Because that's where we are.
We'll see you there. Yeah.
We're all in on Maui. We were there for 2 days and we were like, yeah, here, this will be it.
Yeah.
It's not underwater.
Yeah, but it is amazing. It's so philosophical to think about, retiring in Hawaii in how many years, but it really does drive the decisions that we make today. We are both making major moves in our businesses right now, and it's what we do today is going to affect that decision. And it's cool, it's powerful, and I think that that's some awesome momentum that we have.
It really does almost contextualize very little decisions. You're like, should I buy a new computer or should I put that money in the market for another, take that $1,500 or $2,000 and just put it somewhere else, let it grow maybe because I am trying to retire to Maui. So it's it makes you think about how you allocate your funds and how you allocate your time. Should I do this? It's not really a priority. Will that help me retire in Maui? So it's interesting because I don't generally do a lot of long-term planning. I'm very much a 1 year at a time type person, but I am thoughtful about ultimately where do I want to end up and where do I want to go? But I feel like the pandemic really, for me, threw a lot of, I already believe life to be uncertain and you never know what's coming down the pike, but the pandemic really just It's like being sideswiped.
Yeah. And I think it's not meant to put you in a box or to make you feel bad about, oh gosh, you didn't make it to Maui in 10 years or you got off track. No, it's more of what you said. It's sort of this gentle reminder of when you're faced with a decision, it can be that deciding factor between choice A and B.
I read an article about it was either a study or a technology. It's like a belt that people wore that would vibrate anytime they faced due north. And what it would do is over time, people would gently start to have a better sense of direction. They knew, because like essentially they had an internal mechanism, almost like, when you get phantom vibration from your phone. So I think of the long-term goals almost as that. It's like knowing where is your due north, like where am I going? It's not necessarily that like, you just need to know when you're headed east, right? Like, but as long as you're close to north, like you'll find your way, you'll do a little pivot here and there. And okay, I'm directly due north at this point. But it's what helps you from understanding that like, okay, I'm definitely not going the right direction now because I haven't felt that buzz in a little bit. So those long-term goals are sort of that directional awareness. It's making sure you know exactly what direction you should be pointed versus like, what am I doing day to day?
Yeah. And I think even in such an unknown time in our, like, we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. It is still helpful to have that sort of guiding light, North Star, pointing you in a direction. It feels good to have some direction.
So I want to talk to both of you about your processes for looking at the year. And I mean, as we covered in the Hangout, some people have sort of what I guess you would think of as like a different fiscal year of how they think about the year. Like John was talking about like September being sort of like his start. And there's like a lot of businesses that like their fiscal year is like April to April or whatever. So, for me, I'm very much a January to December type person. I love the mark of the new year. I love that there's like this grand eclipse into like newness. The calendar changes. Everything's different, right? So for me, I love that. And I really, I get jazzed by the end of the year and then the beginning of the year. First, are both of you New Year's people, or do you like work off of your birthday? Do you work off of some other arbitrary date? And then then secondarily to that, if you do have any date that is sort of like your eclipse moment of starting over, whether it be New Year's or something else, what is your process for planning out? Either is it in increments of 3 months? Is it in increments of weeks? Is it an increment of a year? Like, how do you go about doing it? How do you view being deliberate about where you're going in your life?
Yeah, I know that for me, when you brought up too about the North Star, I feel that it's like if you got that North Star, how do you know that you're going the right way? And for me, 2020 definitely helped me to get more in tune with that, to know like what is it that is guiding me to do whatever it is I'm doing and why. And for that reason, as far as my process is concerned, I do in some way, shape, or form do like a reflection. And the other thing too is it's funny, my birthday is January 19th. So even though the new year comes, it's like, oh, it's also my birthday. So I don't know, it's just like this period of time where I start to get going, but then I know that I'm going to be a year older. And that also in a way kind of starts off, okay, now I'm this old, and what is this year going to be like? So it's like another year within the year, I guess, that I focus on. But essentially after that reflection, I do kind of take a look at like what I want to do this year. I write it down, I reflect on it. I spend a lot of time for this year, really just asking more questions about why do I want to do this? And what are the reasons why this can work out, why this is possible. And so like things like that have also helped me to get even more excited and to really just allow it to sink in. So I find that I do spend some time, like I said, in reflection, and then just kind of letting whatever that vision is or whatever just kind of sink in a way. And then it helps me to get prepared for it. So I know all right, this is happening. At some point we're going to start going. And are you committed to it or not? So I take that year, and then between my team and I, we, kind of split up into quarters, so to speak. And I kind of list out what's going to happen or what should happen within those quarters for both professionally and personally. So that's my process in that way. And I don't know, it feels better again, because I think it's just being guided by myself and what really makes me happy at the end of the day.
So I like that you are very focused on the why of why you're doing it. Is that something that you've kind of always done, or and it's just kind of gotten stronger in your process, or is it sort of like 2020 was a watershed moment where you were like, oh snap, I really need to think more about why I do the things that I do? Was it one or the other?
I think it was more of this past year.
Yeah, major like reshifting of priorities.
Yeah, because I mean, if anything, it was kind of like if my if my ability to be mobile and to be free, during the pandemic and whatever the new normal looks like, if that's restricted to whatever extent, it just really got me thinking more about my own freedom and what I want. So it's like now it became like up here. It just, whatever that this time did, it definitely did that. It's like, hey, this is what I want, and I'm very clear as to why I want it. And it's interesting too, because right as the year was ending, I ended up having like a difficult conversation with a customer to let him know, like, this isn't working out. You know what I mean? So I also, within that, saying this is not going to fit within what I say, I want to do, with my life in the next year. So why am I going to keep doing it? It's kind of like a no-brainer, but just really, I don't know, just allowing myself to just settle into those things has really been helpful to sort of plan out what's going to, what will happen this year.
One more question before I turn to Sarah and ask the same question. But for you, you had mentioned that you get together with your team and you kind of break down the year into quarters, and then, you have for yourself personal goals. How extensive is your sort of like categorization of your life areas? Like when you approach the year, like, do you have goals for hobbies, for your social life, for your family, for your health? Like how deep down the rabbit hole do you go? Or is it sort of like whatever's top of mind is probably what's most important to you? So do you make a list of like 100 things? Do you make a list of like 5 things to focus on? Or are you very rigid about it? Are you very free flowing about it? And kind of how deep do you go in your life categorization of goals and priorities?
I'm kind of free flowing with it. I would say I have about 10 goals that I say that I've written out. And then I star the top 3. One of them is personal, and the other 2 are definitely business related. The other ones are just kind of like, kind of shooting for the stars, shoot for the moon, land on the stars kind of thing, just to have down as something, just to also, to have there as something to work towards. But I know that the ones that I've starred are like really, really big to me. One of them is personal, like I said, and the other 2 are business. Got
it. Sarah, what about you? Like, how do you go about, and does it start at the beginning of the year? Is it another time? And how do you go about categorizing what you want to accomplish? What are your methods that you employ?
Yeah. So Parshell, you and I have 2 days apart birthday wise. So I'm January 21st. So like you, I have that my business is on a regular calendar year. I think the calendar year is important. But for me, the process is really, like I talked about earlier, breaking down what my long-term goals are, breaking those down into what will I do this year, this month, and then obviously this week and today. As a productivity coach, I see a lot of people saying, I didn't get to my goals. I didn't get anything done this week. I didn't get anything done today. And my first question is always, did you block out time on your calendar to work on those things? And so often it's that step that's actually quite simple, but is hard to do. And so I'm a big fan of block scheduling. So my process really entails planning out when I'm going to take the time to work on those goals, because I know if I don't plan for them, if I don't take the time to work on them, they are not going to accomplish themselves. And so that is a big, big part of the process, is to breaking things down and putting it on my calendar.
Switching the wrong way. There we go. There we go. Okay, got it. How much of, so you brought up an interesting point there, because putting it on your calendar leads to the conversation around documentation, right? So, Parshell, you talked about meeting up with your team and kind of breaking things down into quarterly goals and having personal goals and starring them. And Sarah, you put things on your calendar. What is your method of documenting all the things that you want to accomplish? And then how do you go about through the year kind of reminding yourself and thinking about what it is that you want to accomplish? And, how do you use this as a thing that doesn't just happen at the beginning of the year, but something that you use throughout the year and you make sure kind of happens?
Something that's really been helpful for me in this past year is literally every Sunday I pull up and I use it in Notion, but essentially it's like, it's called a flight path. And I got this from a book called The Millionaire Master Plan. But essentially, probably for the last like 8 months or so, I've been every Sunday, I go back and I revisit this table that I have, and the table has all of those main goals. And then also a place where I would then track or update where I'm at with it, either in a percentage wise of completion, or, if it's, to, like, for example, to do 18 courses, then, I would put the number where we're at kind of as a tally. So I have that there. And then beneath that, there's like other checklists that I go through according to this flight path. It's really, really cool. But just to, acknowledge sort of where you are and to just keep you reminded of what needs to happen to get to the next stage of, what I want to do in terms of entrepreneurship. So if you guys haven't heard of it, it is like, it's amazing. It's been so helpful. The author of the book is Roger Hamilton, and there's like a whole system around it. But yeah, it's like, I know, for example, just to tell you guys, like, I'm at a level orange and I'm trying to get to a yellow level in this. And I know exactly, based on the book, what sort of the core things have to be in place to be functioning at sort of a yellow level. So highly recommend it.
We'll definitely, I'll definitely check out the flight path thing. I'm always looking for like new tools and ways of doing it. Do you use your calendar to, like, you said you want to do 18 courses, right? So at what point do you put on your calendar time to actually create those 18 courses?
Well, the courses are for clients. So
okay, I thought you meant you were putting at 18 courses.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right. But if I were, then yeah, I would definitely, I use my Google Calendar, and I use Spark as well, which connects to the Google Calendar, same difference. But I do have in there right now already blocked out times for things. So for example, the Puppetpreneurs, which is part of one of my goals as well, what I'm helping out with there. And so I have time already dedicated in the calendar of when I'm going to go look at it, focus on it, or, we actually just started a writer's room. So that's like really sick. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I definitely have the calendar piece, and that's important too. Like, looking at this is like, okay, if I want to do these things, like, how much time is actually required? I started to understand that. And then to say, okay, if I'm going to block it in, either something's coming out, or, like, what's going to be in its place, or what needs to be adjusted, or where can I make the time to do this? So yeah, I definitely use some sort of a time blocking to sort of navigate and know what I need to do.
Rockin'. Sarah, what about you?
Well, obviously, I'm a big list maker. I love lists. I have lists of all kinds of different things. But the lists they can start to feel overwhelming. They can make you feel like you're actually not making any progress. And so I think, to Parshall's point, that keeping track of your progress is so important, and plotting that out. In order to get the 18 courses done, here's what I need to do. Understanding how much time that thing's going to take. I'm a huge fan of Harvest for time tracking. So, just literally, it's a stopwatch. Just turn it on, turn it off, multiply that by the number of things that you're trying to accomplish, and you have a sense. It's hard to estimate time. And so I think getting really tangible about how much time is this going to take is so important. And then seeing that progress. At the end of the week, I accomplished X amount of things off my list, and celebrating that is huge. And we're so guilty of, well, if I'm not done with it 100%, I'm a failure and I'm not done. And I think we need to celebrate the progress and the successes that we have along the way, because that really helps motivate us. Getting started is the hardest part. And it's so easy to just keep putting off those bigger projects because you don't have time to finish all of it right now, or you're not sure what all of it even entails. But when you can really start to break it down, it helps you just tackle little pieces of it over time. That's how you're going to get these things done. So I think this breaking it up and really recognizing and understanding progress is just critical to reaching your goals.
Yeah, and there's two things you each brought up, but I think one, people underestimate how critical it is to actually set the time aside to do something, because it is going to be one of the first ways that you're going to see sort of a make or break. Did I set aside enough time, or do I have time left over? So starting to get a sense of how long things actually take. But if you don't set aside that time, chances are you're not actually going to get to it because other priorities are going to come up. So I think that's one piece. The second piece, Sarah, to your point about celebrating progress, is part of this whole notion of, big projects. You can't eat the whole elephant at once. You can't boil the ocean, the whole thing, that taking down projects piece by piece and even getting most of the way there is still better than kind of giving up because you didn't get all the way there, which is one of the reasons why I'm so anti-resolutions as as a thing. I like having year-long goals. I think that's fine. And I personally like having themes for my year. I find that they're really helpful to try and think about, as a person, what do I want out of my life? Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? And those themes are, I limit them to 3. And I find that that's really helpful to kind of have just a very simple thing to focus on throughout the year. Do you do anything with themes, either of you?
Well, when I was very active in church, I mean, there the church always had a theme, and that was sort of could have been a theme that I would use for the year. What I did, I just wrote down 3 words. Those 3 words were focus, fun, and flow. So that's kind of what it boils down to. The other thing too that's interesting when we talk about time is that I know that I got pretty bad at sort of underestimating how much time it would take to complete a goal, because I wouldn't necessarily write down all of the components that needed to be checked off to say, now you can check this big thing off. You know what I mean? So what I found really interesting is that among a lot of entrepreneurs who do very, very well, they're really, really good at estimating and predicting what will happen and seeing how close they get to it, and depending on how good you are, the more the more you can predict a lot of things, including revenue, customers, what's going to happen over here or there. And so that's something that for me around time has been very interesting to kind of explore, because eventually I'd love to get to the point where, if I'm out on a retreat, or if I'm out at an event, or if I'm doing something, if someone asks me, well, how much was your time worth? Because it sounds like you just were having fun. I want to be able to say, yeah, that was worth about $400 me just doing that, because I know, and it's calculated where my time is being spent and what that means in terms of an outcome or a deliverable. The better I get at that, or anyone, the more I think you can predict much bigger things of what something will take and how much time it'll take, or how to get to that result, So that's just been very intriguing to me as well, going into this year around focus and knowing what's what and how to, divvy out the time, and not because I really suck at guessing. I'm oh, I could do that tomorrow, and then it's shit, I need at least 3 weeks to do this. Why did I think it was only going to take a day? That's just it's not reasonable. And then I end up feeling horrible about not doing it, so it's just if I really give the time to it, it absolutely 100% is possible.
So there's so many things there, but for me, the understanding the value of your time and how that connects to so many of the other things you just said, but I think that connects to so many things about your success as a person. Forget just your success as a business person. I think understanding that your time has value and understanding what your priorities are, and then taking into consideration how much time things take. So you had mentioned earlier, I have so many things to do. And if one more thing comes on there, I got to say no to something else. You have to take so understanding how much time you have, in your lifetime, but also just understanding it in the immediate sense and what that time is worth, I think gives you more confidence to say yes and no to things that either serve or don't serve your value. I have a hard time with the idea of going into a year and not being super, I get more and more and more deliberate about how I plan my years every single year, partly because I see the value in every little bit more that I do in thinking about my year. Now, it doesn't mean I'm necessarily doing more work. I'm just getting better at it. But having a plan for the year, understanding what your time is worth, understanding what your priorities are, all of that I've found just helps me to have a more satisfying year, because I feel like the things I'm spending my time on, the things I'm saying yes to, the things I'm saying no to, are all in complete alignment with where I'm trying to go. So I really, I just want to pick out that thing that you said about understanding the value of your time and underscore how important that actually is, and how much I think people should really get clear on what their time is worth, because once you know what your time is worth, I think you have a better sense of when you're wasting it. When you like take on that project and you're like, and somebody's not appreciative, you're like, I don't need to do this for you. Like, my time is extremely valuable. And like, I have all these other things I'm not getting to. So like, and it also helps you then to begin, it's making me think it helps you to begin to weed out good and bad relationships, right? Like, to be able to better understand what's worth donating your time for, because even if it doesn't match from a financial standpoint, like, it's worth that much in terms of the value of the time that you're putting towards it, right? So I just think that's such an important point in terms of looking at it your year. If you start anywhere, it might be like, understand how much your time is worth, and then understand where you're allocating it. If you're starting like 2021 as your first year being planful about your year, that would probably be a great place to start. Understand what your time is worth, understand what your priorities are, and start to better understand where you're spending your time throughout the year, so that in 2022 you can say, here's how I spent my last year, here's what was valuable, here's what wasn't. And over the next 4 or 5 years, you'll probably turn into an absolute like laser focused rock star.
Yeah, I was going to say my theme for the year, I was going to actually say it isn't so much a theme as it is my intentions for the year. And so, Parjal, what you said just totally aligns with that. It's how am I spending my time? What are my priorities? And what am I being intentional about? And I know what those things are for 2021, and that's exciting. And that is, again, a driver of how I choose to spend my time. I mean, that really drives my calendar, drives my time.
And what's amazing too is just all the other things that happen just on the outskirts that you didn't even expect to happen along the journey to those major milestones or the things that you want to hit. Because here's another thing that I do. I didn't mention this, but I usually go through my pictures in my phone from the previous year, and I'll just make like a small like little album, and it'll just have like highlights or things that I just said, oh, that was a really cool moment, or we did, So I end up with about like maybe 10 to 15 pictures or so in this album. But the point being is that, like, as I was kind of working to whatever the goals were for that year, I'm like, oh my God, look at what actually did happen that I didn't expect to. And it's just, I guess there's a really good gratitude moment, or a way to do that too, is just to connect with like, wow, look at what did happen. I didn't expect it, Another thing too, I was looking at a list of things that I said that I wanted to do. And I'm like, I actually did that. Like, it was kind of like, oh shit, I could check that off. I didn't even, it's one of those small things. It's like, oh my God, like that totally happened. So I could like check that off. You know what I mean? One of the things too was I wanted to do a birthday trip. So that's actually happening also, kind of just happening. So, yeah, I'm going to Mexico anyway. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And it just, I put it down on my list of things I wanted to do, at some point before the next birthday, and it's happening. So it's pretty cool.
I think that's one of the benefits of actually in the planning process, writing things down, because, I do my 3 words every year, and every year that I do that, I go back and I look back on all the times that I've done my 3 words. And if you haven't, if you're not familiar and you're listening to about what my 3 words is, you can Google Chris Brogan, my 3 words, or you can go to my website, jeffgibber.com/my-3-words. But it's essentially, you come up with 3 words that are your themes for the year, right? So I've been doing that since 2013. What's interesting is when I go back and look at all of the words I use, first of all, I see like an ebb and flow. It's sort of this like ambition, okay, chill, ambition, chill. And it's sort of like, I'll have different themes that'll come up, like focus and discipline. So like I'll have some years where I go ambitious and hard at something, but then I feel like, okay, I need to rein it in and focus and discipline. But it's interesting because you can then see your progression, and kind of your point, you look at your pictures, you look at your previous to-do lists or tasks or whatever, or goals, and you see like what you actually have accomplished, and you see what, like how you've grown as a person, and then you see themes that start to emerge. And I think all of this is just part of the journey of self-awareness, so that, I'm very much about like sort of the self-actualization of, the experience of life, like making it what you want it to be by consistently applying new information to get you closer to what you're trying to, like, just enjoy the life you have and accomplish the goals you want. Right. So I find that the whole process of recording, without that, you can't get to the end of the year and actually reflect it. Like, imagine if you tried to do that, but your camera roll was empty. You'd be like, oh, well, I guess that was, let me see what I remember. But like, there'd be all these things that are lost that in the act of recording, you can then go back and be like, oh, wow, that thing. Right. So I'm doing that now with habits. One of my big things, I talked about it ad nauseum in 2020, but it's going to be one of my things for 2021 is this is my first full year of actually addressing habits as like a conscious practice. Like, what do I do every day? What do I want to do every week? All those sorts of things, and actually tracking that and then looking back on what worked, what didn't. Are there certain days where, you know, things just don't work out or whatever? So that's something I'm doing a lot more of is habit tracking. I've got my 3 words. For me, in the life areas thing, like I delineate like real deep into it. I'm like, okay, friends, social life, health, work, personal, family. Like I've got like 15 different categories, and it just helps me to think through like showing up in all these different areas.
I love it. I know it's interesting too. You mentioned about like how when you kind of look back over the years, you were either like super like go, or just kind of relax and, you know, recuperate. And the book that I was mentioning earlier, that Roger Hamilton wrote, he talks about sort of that being something that happens year to year, I guess, if you are growing and evolving, because essentially the way that he describes this is like you go from being the designer of the car to then driving the car. And then you design it and perfect it, then you get back and drive it. You know, it's like sort of this back and forth that you do, you know, sort of it's actually very natural, you know what I mean? And that's just how I think it's supposed to be, sort of this natural, like, okay, go, work, focus, and then like, okay, chill, recuperate, relax, reflect, you know, and then come back. And whatever that means, or maybe go to more of a strategic place in your business and then come back, you know?
I think of it as, I think I wrote a post about this forever ago. I called like the rule or the law of everything, expansion and contraction. Like it's how everything works, right? Like, take the example that I would use all the time is like you take breweries, right? So for a while there were thousands and thousands and thousands of breweries, everybody making their own unique brew. Then all of a sudden, all these big breweries, like all these big, like, you know, Budweiser's and the Coors, they start buying up all the small ones. And all of a sudden the beer market contracts and there's less people. And then it expands again because more people are like, we don't want that. We want something different, something unique, something that's outside of that. And it expands again, right? And that happens in everything. You have popularity of networks. They expand and grow, and then it gets too crowded and it's too mainstream. And then something else crops up. So then it's like this expansion and contraction. And that happens with us. We expand in certain ways, and we get to a certain point where we're like, you know what, I think we need to rein this in, and you contract a little bit. I've had it a lot with like extroversion and introversion. And this year is really, you know, toss that on its head, because I'm like a real people person, be around the energy of other humans. And like, I've just been sitting in this corner for like 8 months.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is recognizing it, one, and then actually taking the time or the ebb and living that. And we are so guilty of, I want more, I'm doing more, I can work till midnight. And it's just important to have both of those things. You have to recognize it in yourself that this is the moment that I need, and then really, really take, if it's time, if it's energy, whatever it is, but giving that to yourself. You know, it's really, really critical. Like, I don't know why we all think, I often talk about, we wear burnout like it's a badge of honor, or like, I'm busy, I'm burned out, I'm this, I'm so important. And it's like, yeah, but what if you didn't have to live that way, or at least kind of puff your chest out in that way? And I think it's just important to say, and what a gift to be able to say, I didn't work last week and that felt really good and I needed that break. You know, I think things like that, like, why do we feel like we're not allowed to say, I'm taking this time off, or I'm going to slack off on Friday, I'm not really going to do anything. Like, I might take a meeting, but I'm not really going to work. Like, do you need that? Then take it. And then don't be shy about saying it.
When did success become that you work more rather than less? Like, I feel like the people I would be most envious of are the people who are like, I work 1 hour, 1 day a week.
Yeah.
Like, damn, like Tim Ferriss didn't write like, the 400-hour work week. He wrote like the 4-hour work week for a reason. And I'm with you 100% on that. So when we, so like turning from like, okay, here's what we do, right? So we've spent most of this episode so far talking about like, here's what our process is. Here's what we focus on. Here's kind of like observations. Let's turn it now to like us as the council giving some advice. We've got people are going to be listening to the show thinking about like, okay, well, I'm thinking, it's beginning of the year. I want to start planning out my year. I want to start thinking about my goals. I just want to have a better year, right? One way or another. I want to be better personally, professionally, in my, relationships, whatever it might be. Where would you weigh in terms of advice that you would give people towards starting that process, because we each have different systems. There's overlap between them. But what do you think are sort of like the critical elements to having a deliberately planned year where you're able to grow in a way that matches what your goals are? Or how would you go about giving somebody the advice on how to get started?
I would say initially that you are in control of it, no matter how out of control it feels. And I think whether you are an employee or you're an entrepreneur or you are a parent, whatever kind of responsibilities you do have, you are still in control of the decisions you make and how you're living your life. And that sounds kind of like, whoa. But it's important to recognize that. And I just think that that's a thing that is often missed. We're falling victim to my boss made me do it. My coworkers made me do it. I'm so behind because of all these people emailing me all these things. It's like, yeah, but that's your responsibility to take control of. And I don't want that to sound like harsh, but I want that to sound empowering in that it's a real positive. You are in control. You do not have to respond to emails at 11 p.m. when your boss emails you. You can set that boundary and say, I will respond at 9 a.m. when I'm at my desk in the morning. And that's okay. And so I think it doesn't have to be this big, I'm in control of, my whole kingdom, but be in control of your inbox, be in control of when you are kind of open for business, be in control of how you're communicating to other people. And so I think that concept of control is just the best thing that I can recommend to people. And again, I hope it's empowering.
Yeah, and I agree with that. The one thing that I would add to it is that I think that there are three different sort of modes, right? Or three different, I don't really know how to explain it, but there's control, influence, and accept, right? Like there are situations in your life that you will simply have to accept because it is the nature of what the world is, right? Like I know that there are certain talks that I might want to give, but that I will not be invited back after I give that talk, right? Because it'll be very critical of one thing or another. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm not being invited back to that talk. It actually happened at Social Media Day. But anyway, so like, that's like an accept. Like you have to accept that those are the rules of it, right? Now, you may be able to influence that situation by maybe like tiptoeing or nudging it in such a way where over time, those things change. So for instance, the email thing, you may not be able to like immediately drop the hammer and say like, I'm not doing this or I won't do this or whatever, but you may be able to influence to get to the point where you can control it, right? Like you don't necessarily have to, it's like a continuum almost. There's things that you can just accept or you can try to start to influence, and that's speaking up, making your voice heard, it being empowered to like actually start to exert some sort of influence to get to a point where maybe you can control and have some say in how your job function is. And it's tough because like when I think about work in general as an entrepreneur, like I control everything in my whole purview. But like when I think about people who have a 9-to-5 or who have, a job where maybe they don't have an enormous amount of say, the entrepreneur in me that would probably get fired from their job would tell them to just go and say exactly whatever it is that they want. Like, it's my job, I'll do it my way. That's why I'm not a good employee. So I would just, I would take your advice of the control thing and just be very conscious over, are you in a position where you can control, influence, or you have to accept? And even if you're in a position where you have to accept it, look for the opportunities to move from accept to influence and influence to control.
For sure. And it's all about pivots and small pivots. And one tip I love is if you are going into a situation where you're saying, to your boss or whoever, I need to make a change, or this isn't working for me, is to bring up some sort of a solution. And I think that's where the influence comes into play. Jeff, it's not working for me. That you email me at 11 o'clock. Instead of saying that, say, I noticed that you're emailing me at 11 o'clock at night. Is it okay with you if I respond at 7 a.m. after I've had a cup of coffee? My mind's just better at that point. And so I think there's so many ways to handle it. It's not about like control necessarily, but it's about those, like, it's okay to speak up for yourself. It's okay to say, this is what I need, and not being forceful about how you come to a resolution on it, but being, can we have a conversation about that? Can we talk about it? Can we talk about this in a way that's going to work for both of us? And I think that that's a very kind and humane way to handle some of these situations. Agreed.
Parshell, what would you tell people as a starting point? Like, where do you think, if somebody wanted to plan out their year, what advice would you give them as kind of the starting point, and maybe some tactical things to do along the way?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, after kind of knowing what you want to go for and what you envision this year to be, the next year to be, I think it's really important to make a decision. That was like the first thing that came to my mind, was like making a decision to decide that this is going to happen. Decide that you're committed to this. Because ultimately, like, it is our responsibility, to play in how this unfolds. So you have to, I think, first make a very, very clear decision. A lot of times we're just waiting for our own selves to make a decision, to make the choice. For real, like, we're the ones that are doing that. And so the next thing that comes to mind from after you've made a decision, to me, the number one, the hardest thing to do from that point is to be that person, right? Whoever that person is that you see having this amazing, fulfilling year, how can I practice that now? Because me, on a spiritual note, I'm like, well, there really is no distance between like where I am now and this new person, because I can contact them through my emotion and how I feel. So if I can practice how to be that person, I'm more likely to get inspired about what to do, and what to do becomes my work. And that's what I focus on. That's what I do. It should be inspired work. It should be coming from a place that really drives you and gives you joy and peace, and feels, something that you feel is contributing to others. And just do that work. Like, it's a privilege to do that kind of work. I think a lot of people are just like not doing stuff that they want to do, and for whatever reason. And if you have the opportunity to change that up and like what you said, Sarah, take more control and take responsibility, like, it is possible. So I think it definitely starts with the decision. Find a way to practice what it feels like to be that person, because then you're already there. Everything else that comes up is inspired, things that are inspiring you to take action. Like, because as you are that person, or practicing being that person, you'll start to think, you'll start to have thoughts about what that person would do. And as you get that stuff, like, write it down, that sounds like a really good idea. I'm going to do that. Now, the other part that comes up that's going to be challenging is that you're going to come up against stuff that, even though it's a no-brainer for you to do a video, or it's a no-brainer for you to call this person up, or to just push a little bit harder, like, the stuff that comes up is just, it's coming up to help us be aware of, the things that we can also do something about. For me, in this process, it's definitely had me go back and do some freaking like inner child work and all this stuff that's important. But, trauma is real. And if you're like me, I put the stuff to the side and I don't acknowledge it at all. So by acknowledging that now, I'm like, okay, I can be the parent of this sort of inner child and continue to go forth with whatever it is that I want to say I want to do that year. So, but to me, it all starts with like a decision and making up your mind. This is what I want to do. And then just going forward.
I love that, because it is so deeply rooted in something that I'm like, if I had to look at like what everything that I do is about helping people identify that it's, let me see how to say this. It's my biggest thing. So you think I should be able to say it properly, but your work can have meaning, right? Like your life can have meaning. You can have a purpose and you can just do them because it's yours. It's your choice to do it, right? And I think inspiring people to understand that you don't have to just go through the motions or react to whatever is happening in your life. Like you have a choice to make, and there's a lot of like externalities you're gonna have to deal with, but like you have the ability to decide what your life is about, what your purpose is. And I think to your point, like you started what you were saying, basically that comes off right off the heels of that. Like when you know who you are and you know what you want, then it just becomes a matter of like, what's the process for implementing it and what works best and all that. I think where the real challenge is, I think there's a lot of people that don't actually know that they get to decide what their world is about and what they want to go and do. And it's one of the things that like when I work with clients, like I honestly find most of the time what I'm working on is not like their systems or processes or like how to get a little bit better here, but it's like giving them permission to just do the thing that they wanted to do in the first place, that they refuse to talk about because they're scared to say like, this is what I want. Like I was terrified to start the Superhero Institute because I was like, no one will take me seriously if I show up wearing a superhero shirt. And then after I did it, I realized people take me more seriously now because I show up in a superhero shirt and like I'm real about it, right? And it was terrifying. It was super it's still sometimes a little bit scary, but like it feels right. Like it feels like it's resonant. So now like when I make decisions, they're rooted in this like really deep-seated purpose that I believe in with like every cell that is in my body. And I think a lot of people when they think about like this is one of the reasons why I don't like resolutions is I feel like resolutions are very like surface level. Like, I want to lose some weight. No, who do you want to be that weighs less? What does that serve for you in your life? Why do you need that? Is it because you want to live longer and be healthy for your children or your spouse? Is it because you want to look good because it gives you more self-confidence? Like, and what are all of those things in service? What are you going to do with that? Right. So like, it's like that exercise of the 5 whys where you try to get to the root of why you're about any of this stuff in the first place. And it's interesting that you kind of brought that up, almost starting from that point of like because I think the 3 of us, just from my, our interactions, I have a sense that like all 3 of us are fairly clear on why we do what we do, and I think a lot of people aren't necessarily sure why they do what they do. And I think maybe that if I was going to give any advice, I would say maybe make that your first step is like, get really self-aware. Like and you talked a lot about inner child. Like I know one of the reasons I'm an entrepreneur is because I'm an only child and I don't do well with authority. So like, I'm never going to be a good employee. And like, as much as I want that to not be the case, like, it's the same way that like being fit for me is about fighting that inner fat kid that like just wants to eat macaroni and cheese every day. So like having that self-awareness allows you to at least manage it and deal with it. But I think you gotta be really, really clear on it if you want to take action on it and start to make an impact in your life. Now that said, the last thing I want to say on that is like, after you decide who you want to be, my process has been, I try to use every year as taking the next big step in that journey, right? So I look at what I did and I say, okay, this next year is to take a little bit bigger step. And then the next year, take a little bit bigger step and a little bit bigger and so on and so on. And then when I do that, I then take whatever that big step is and I break it down into a lot of smaller steps in terms of like, well, who do I need to be day to day to make that happen? Where are the habits that I need to have? What's the mindset that I need to have? Partial to your point, you said something along that lines of like, you are that person, basically. Whoever that person is that you want to be, you are already that person. So it's just a matter of like being that person on a more regular basis until you've kind of become that person, right? So like, I think about who I want to be at the end of my life, like how I want my eulogy to read. And then I go all the way back and I say, okay, well, what do I need to do this year to get closer to what I want to be in 5 years or 10 years? And then what do I need to do this month to make sure that this year is that way? And then what do I need to do today to make that happen? And then if I'm going to do that today, what do I need to do in the morning? Right. So it's like, I'm going from like this super, super big grand out there thing all the way down to the smallest, which starts from like who I want to be in the first place.
Yeah. And I think it's beautiful at the end of the day, every year going through this process, what we're doing is thinking about what we want. It's like, all of this is about what you want. So yeah. I remember hearing somebody the other day talk about, if you're complaining about your clients because they only pay you this much, well, you're the one who charged them that.
Yes,
there's responsibility here, right? Like, this is all about designing something that we want.
Mm-hmm.
right? And it just even thinking about just the logic of that, there's something I want, but I'm not, for whatever reason, I'm not, deciding to do it, or whatever, or the year doesn't really pan out the way that I thought in terms of my intention and that's the part that's mind boggling. I'm like, well, didn't I say I wanted it? So I'm like, why? What's the breakdown? And once I started to acknowledge that, I'm like, okay, I need to bring some more self-awareness around this because it doesn't make any sense. I'm saying that I want this. I'm saying that this will bring me more joy. I'm saying that my life will be incredibly fantastic with this or whatever. And then it's just like, well, then why don't I go get it? If I know anyway, just that breakdown is very interesting. This is all about like desire. And the beauty of it is that we can have these desires and we're deserving of these desires. We're worthy of them. You know what I mean? Like if you sit down and you think about, well, why do I want this? Who is this going to affect? Like how is this going to help other people by hitting this goal? And it's just like, you develop more reasons why it should happen. Now you're convincing yourself, you sold yourself, and hopefully, you can deal with it better. But at the end of the day, it's like we're going after what we want. And I think that's like really exciting. And I think that's like the whole freaking point of like life. It's like go after what you want and create it. Like what's in your way, really.
Yeah. And I like the idea that you're worthy of it because it's like the idea is if you put the work in and you get it, that's evidence that you're worthy of it. And even if you don't get it, that's not evidence that you're not worthy of it. Just maybe that you need a little bit more time, or maybe there's a different path for you, or maybe just sometimes things don't work out, but it doesn't mean anything about you. It just is what it is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. I think the only thing I would add is to really, if you're a victim right now and you're listening to this and you're like, well, I couldn't because of this or this or this, or like, I'm not pretty enough, rich enough, cool enough, connected enough. It's like, no. Stop that. Like you think that, but everybody has that. Everybody who has what you want had those same challenges or a harder challenge and they did it. And I think that's a cool thing to go into a new year is to think about, but use your things that are making you a victim to empower you to propel forward. Like turn that negative into like your secret sauce and the juice that gets you going.
Yeah. And I've had goals that didn't pan out. And when I tell you, I'm so thankful they didn't pan out. Like, I think that there's also sort of this, there's this protection that's happening around us too, somehow naturally that just, if it doesn't work out, it's like, I just trust, that it wasn't supposed to. Just when I think on my life period, like one of my goals was to have like 2 or 3 kids. My life would not be what it is now if I had 2 or 3 kids with the person I was with then. So it's just, I'm thankful that goal didn't come to pass, as much as I tried for it and wanted, so I think that there's also that perspective too, Jeff, to what you were saying is like, well, if it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean anything about you as a person or that you suck or whatever. It could be like freaking divine intervention that came in and, prevented you from this huge horror, it could be so much worse,
Totally.
in any situation,
Yeah, so many of the things that I wanted, I'm so glad that they didn't happen. Like so glad. Because it worked out so much better this way.
Yeah,
for sure. All right. Well, points to wrap up on for planning for the year, goal accomplishment, goal setting, anything to leave our listeners, watchers with anything to make them feel empowered and better for the year.
Just do it. Go for it. Like whatever it is, just do it. And I just don't want anybody listening to look back and we're here in 2022 saying, oh gosh, I didn't try anything. Just try. It's like, what is the worst that could happen?
Rochelle?
Yeah, I would say, even if there's one thing, no matter how small it is, no matter how big it is, it's something that you want. It's something that you can have. You just have to make the decision and choose yourself and allow it to happen. You can go for it. You can do it. Literally nothing is in your way.
And on mine, a slightly more cynical take, but at the same time, in line with what you're both saying. But I think on the one hand, like if you want something, plan for it, figure out who you need to be to get there, take the steps, the actions day in, day out. And if you're someone who's in a position where no matter how hard you work, you are in the type of situation where you are trapped and there's a system that is standing in your way, make your efforts about destroying that system. Because I mean, I'm trying to be optimistic about the whole thing, but sometimes there's just messed up stuff in this world, and I think we need to do a little bit more to destroy those sort of systems that stand in our way as much as we do to build ourselves up to be ready for it. Because a lot of people are working real hard to make themselves ready for it, but there's inequitable systems in the way, and part of my year is about tearing those down. So that's my last thing. Well, this has been the Heroic Council. Another fun episode starting off the year. Feeling positive, feeling good, setting goals, doing things. Tune in every Monday at 2:00 right here, wherever you're watching. We have a Facebook page, a Facebook group. We have a YouTube channel. We have Periscope, and you can catch us on any of those. Always tune in. superheroinstitute.org/heroic to find all the other places you can subscribe, including podcasts, wherever you get them. And we'll be back next week with another episode. I don't know if we have set a topic yet for next week. Have we?
Nope, I don't think so.
We have a couple we have a whole list of different topics, but I'm not sure what our next thing will be. So tune in next week to find out. I'll post it in the Facebook group and wherever these episodes are found, what our topic will be. And I think Tim will be joining us next week. But thanks for tuning in. Oh, what are you into right now? Sarah. Putting you on the spot. What are you into right now?
I'm really into what my puppy got me for Christmas. Sharpie S gel pens and wonderful large lined Post-it notes. So, I mean, this is everything to me. I love this.
I mean, I'm very specific about the pens I use, so I feel you. I only use one type of pen. I refuse to use anything else.
They're great. It's just like simple joy.
Marcel, anything that you're into before we go?
Geez.
Do you want a minute to think about it?
Yeah, I'm not.
Because I got one.
Anything? Okay, good.
So I just bought. My last laptop computer that I had was the Apple MacBook Pro from 2015. Phenomenal computer, had lots of ports. It was like a really great form factor. It was a kick-ass computer. It was one of the last ones with the MagSafe adapter, which I think is like the greatest innovation of all of laptop history. And I refused to buy a new Mac for a very, very long time because I was very pissed that they changed up like one of the finest computer designs of all time. And then they released the M1 chip, the new Apple chip. It's the new Apple Silicon chip. And they released a MacBook Pro and a MacBook Air. Now, I won't get the MacBook Pro because I think the touch bar is stupid, but I did just pick up the Apple MacBook Air M1. And let me tell you, it is amazing. It is so fast. It's faster than my iMac, and my iMac is like fully pimped out. It's got like a 64 gig RAM. Like but it's an Intel chip. This M1 is like blazing fast. And I am hypercritical of Apple as like a huge Apple fan. If they put out something that's like subpar, I will like blast them for it. And I was a little reluctant to get this computer, but I didn't want to have my old computer just continue to get slower and everything. I was like, you know what? Pulling the trigger on it. They had a holiday sale, the whole thing. And it's amazing. It's like totally amazing. Oh, and I got one more thing. This is another one that's amazing. So I saw this ad on Facebook not too long ago for a truffled hot sauce called Truff. Now, I love truffles, and I am a major fan of spicy food, like ridiculously spicy food. Like bucket list is eat something so hot I get a t-shirt or plaque. So I love spicy things, and I love truffles, but they're both very strong flavors. So when I saw this ad, I was like, that's stupid. They're both strong flavors. They shouldn't be together. I hate you. You're awful. But my friend Josh, who is a major hot sauce person and also loves truffles much like I do, was a hater just like me. And he was like, somebody got me a bottle and I didn't want to try it and I didn't want to like it, but it's awesome. And I bought the sampler pack within 4 minutes of him telling me that because I trust him that much. And it's incredible. I want to put it on everything. They have a 2-gallon bottle for $250. And I was like, maybe. So if you like truffles and or hot sauce, I guess you should probably like both. You should totally buy it. It's amazing.
Sounds good.
Awesome, Jeff.
Nothing useful at all for like helping you in your business, just like damn good hot sauce.
But that is good. That is information the world needs to hear. I like that.
Oh, and Sarah, with your husband being a fan of smoking meats, this on a smoked meat would be like, Mwah! A brisket I want so badly with this.
We'll need to include the link in the show notes.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. Shit, is there an affiliate link I could use for that? Because I hit that hard just now.
You did. We're in. We love it.
It's really, really good. I'm not kidding. Anywho, this has been the Heroic Council. Thank you all for joining us. Whether you're listening, whether you're watching, we think you're really cool, and we hope you come back for another episode. See you next time.